Thanks very much. This chat around what is the best way for creators individually and in communities to make use of NFTs, this BigONE exchange chat. Gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, Christos going first, just quickly introducing yourselves, and then Luke and then Tommy, and then we'll get into discussion for our viewers and listeners.
Okay, hi, I'm Christos. I'm co-founder and creative director of Shroom Studio, independent animation company with a special interest in blockchain, crypto and NFTs, personally as an artist, but also as a writer and mentor. Currently directing a big VR piece for Oculus. So really exciting, and I'm kind of looking to find ways to meld blockchain with the metaverse. We'll see about that.
Exciting. My name is Luke Stokes. I'm the managing director for the Foundation for Interwallet Operability. I've been in the blockchain space for over 10 years, got a computer science background, ran a company called Foxcart, which is an e-commerce shopping cart platform. I'm just really interested in the merger between technology and these new ways of governance and new tools for basically currency and that are self-sovereign and ways that we can help humanity with it.
Cool.
Hey everybody, I'm Tommy D. I'm a music producer and a songwriter, DJ, and an artist. I'm also a whiskey maker, and I'm also the originator and creative of a tech music company called Traxx. Our goal is to basically look at every aspect of how we engage with music and innovate it using Web3 technology, and also giving basically more choice back to creators. We have a thing that we call the 3 C's called creators, curators, and collectors. And the 3 C's is the ecosystem by which your music is discovered and engaged with and loved. And we want to look at ways of rewarding every single person within that 3C concept. So yeah, great to be here. Thanks very much for having me.
Cool, thanks Tommy, Luke and Christos. Time is a little bit short, and obviously you're super busy. So let's get straight down to it with Christos coming in as our artist, musician representative. And obviously we're looking at the best ways to use NFTs. So give us your kind of, your concise thoughts as an artist or a musician. Why NFTs? Why are they so good? What are the pros and cons?
I mean, really exciting for me. I obviously agree with Luke. Governance, crypto, blockchain is the whole kind of new world that was burgeoning and ready to come into existence, the killer app the internet was waiting for. I was, completely charmed by blockchain a long time ago as a digital artist, but also as someone who's very interested in the future of community and the future of society. I've always been a bit of a futurologist. Part of the work that we do as animators is examine the future. So as a digital artist, I've been waiting for NFTs my whole kind of adult life. Previously, JPEGs, digital work was not considered to have any intrinsic value. And in a kind of physical medium heavy space, it was a real kind of watershed moment when you started to see people being able to sell digital assets. It's got, NFTs, digital assets in terms of artistic, creative output. It's a kind of perfect match because it not only allows you to catalog and authenticate your own work, it also allows that process to continue through the life cycle of art and the artist, and allows us to create new communities between collectors, fans, galleries, artists, musicians, sculptors, painters, and a whole new generation of digital only artists, generative artists, of which I'm kind of partly in that kind of space. So, I mean, some amazing stuff. I self-publish my music, don't have a huge following, but I love doing it. It's really cool, kind of electronic madness. I've spoken to quite a few people who are doing different kind of blockchain-based projects. I'll definitely be having a chat with Tommy D about what we can do. But there's some really nice examples of how artists have been able to amortize their kind of talent and product in a whole new way. I actually think Ditto Music's Oculus is a really interesting idea for unknown artists or artists who are growing their audience to be able to build a long-term relationship with their fans by offering a proportional share of royalties. And NFT is the perfect vehicle. Riff Raff, amazing. Riff Raff's really interesting. His music's on the new Sonic Hedgehog film, up and coming artist. decided, okay, next album, I'm going to sell $5,100 shares, and that's the total kind of royalties for the album. It's $500,000 he raises, and the fans have the complete profit. And I love that kind of relationship, with has not been possible before. We talked about blockchain cutting out the middleman. That's a beautiful example. And my own favorite, Tribe Called Quest. Brilliant, super hip hop guys. Done some work for them in the past as well. So that was like a dream come true. They decided they were going to sell basically 5% royalties on their entire back catalogue, which I think is an amazing opportunity for anyone who's a serious hip hop collector. So, we know Wu-Tang Clan have done some interesting stuff with limited edition, vinyl. Obviously, Riff Raff's gone out and done 5,000. That, to me, is really, it feels like it's the very, very beginnings of a whole new relationship for musicians. In terms of artists, I've seen a whole generation of artists grow up just being able to sell their own work, build out a career. Yes, there's the speculative market with the Bored Ape yacht clubs, which are crypto people investing in new crypto tokens in the same way that we'd be investing in any crypto token. They're looking for a high return, and they're happy to put money in and happy to pump and publicize it themselves, build those networks. But I think much more down to earth. When you look at the examples, my own favorite's Tezos, because I think it's a really good community, and it's a very, very kind of low cost network to work on. And that's quite important for a lot of artists. It's got some kind of eco credentials that are outside ETH. And we've seen some amazing artists come out solely through the Tezos platform, which is really, really encouraging. Artists who might never have had a career. Only 5% of artists traditionally make a living. And all of a sudden you're seeing artists who have established themselves as digital artists online with amazing followings and building themselves really, really good income. It's really, really exciting. And I've just got into doing VR stuff. So I'm kind of really excited to see how the metaverse and NFTs kind of, build the next level of technology and interaction for people. And I don't think it'll ever get boring, to be honest.
It doesn't sound at all boring. I mean, it's all new to me. But what are you, Tommy or Luke? What's your take on hearing it from the musician, from the artist's mouth? I guess, Tommy, you've obviously, this is bread and butter for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the music business for 25 years and sold hundreds of millions of records and had billions and billions of streams. So I've been very lucky. But I've also started out as, a struggling artist and struggling songwriter and a struggling producer. And I know how it feels to be those people. And I think that Christos makes some really, really great points. And I totally share his enthusiasm for this particular place that we're in. But I think it comes with some caveats, which I'll get onto later. I think the important thing is to look at this in two ways. What we do at Token Traxx is, I built Token Traxx because, excuse me, I wanted to have a music first concept around the next evolution of how music becomes, I said at the beginning, the 3C, the creators, the curators, and the collectors. How I wanted it to be them leading the charge and the conversation about how this works for them, not the tech companies. The tech companies have unfortunately led the charge over the last 15, 20 years, and ended up with a system whereby less than 12% of music income actually ends up with the creators themselves. This isn't entirely to do with streaming and all those other companies. It's to do with the system. It's also not to do with the majors, or it's not to do with the artists, or it's not to do with the unions around it. It's to do with the system. It's to do with a system that's been built up over 100 years that mainly revolved around legacy and historic kind of mediums like vinyl and CD, and the royalties that came from the usage of music. And so what I wanted to do when I first set out with Token Traxx, which was, I got into blockchain back in 2015 and got into NFTs about 3 years ago. And I knew there was an obvious kind of connection there with music, but coming from music as a music creator, coming out from that position, I wanted to make sure that the creatives had their, the lead on how it should be. And it was when NFTs really kicked in and came along that I went, yeah, this is exactly the right product. As Christos completely accurately says, the concept of having a unique thing that you can attach to any aspect of your creativity, whether it's in music, obviously songs, recordings, performances, live gigs, merchandise. The fact that you can attach this NFT package, which gives you those 3 golden rules of blockchain: provenance, transparency, and security. You can attach that to a concept around something that you do, that you can then take to your audience, your fan club, your true fans, whatever you want to call them, community, as we love calling it in Web3. But basically it's your fans. And you go, okay, how do you want to interact with this? What do you want to do? These are the things these are the experiences we're going to build in. And of course, what makes this totally different from, say, a Kickstarter or an OnlyFans or a Patreon is that those people can trade that. It's a tradable thing that can be traded on the open market. Therefore, you can use it to actually gain, you can actually be rewarded for this early stage adoption. I was one of the, I was lucky enough to see Madonna's first gig in London, which, I'm that old basically. And I was lucky enough to see Madonna's first gig, but I've got no way of proving that. Now, if there would be the concept of an NFT involved in that situation, I would have been able to stand there, 30 years later and say I was at that gig. So I think there are a huge amount of opportunities. What we are trying to do is go, okay, let's first of all have a conversation with the majors. The majors account for 95% of all top 10 singles of the last 15 years. So you can't avoid the Universals, the Warners, and the Sonys. You have to involve them in that conversation, but you want to lead that conversation. As I said, we want the artists to lead that conversation. And then secondly is to build a whole new system, a completely new system that revolves around artists directly working and talking with their community and their fan base. And that's what we're doing at Token Traxx, is looking at those 2 aspects. But in order to do that, you have to look at every single sort of scenario that revolves around a very simple concept, which is here's a person that makes music. Here's a person that loves music. In the middle is the curator, the person that filters the music. And how do those people want to interact? There's no point in creating a system that's exactly the same as the old system, but with blockchain thrown in, to make it look cool. No point in doing that. You start from scratch. You start from the basic concepts of those 3 things, those 3 people, the 3 C's interacting together, and then we start working out ways of creating the really interesting reward structures around it. I wanted to make a quick point about that Tribe Called Quest, because this is the caveat that revolves around this. The problem we have, I think, at the moment in Web3, and this is something I'm sure you'll probably want to expand upon. The problem we have at the moment in Web3 is that it's wild, wild west out there. There are very little rules because everybody's defining every day. We're all trying out different things and trying things out. Ironically enough, the Tribe Called Quest NFT drop was not Tribe Called Quest. It was actually the rights owners of the Tribe Called Quest, a catalog that sold them. And now, ironically enough, Tribe Called Quest are trying to buy back those rights via the NFT sale. So ironically, this is a really interesting concept because these are rights that Tribe Called Quest had given away earlier on because they didn't know the business and they were probably badly informed, that they're now trying to retain back. So it's an interesting kind of workaround. But the industry itself, the music business itself, that's a really messed up, one of a different word, I can never think of one, but it's a messed up system. And you start with a new system, which basically allows artists and creators to work with curators and collectors and everybody working together. And I think you'll find a much more interesting way forward for creative people going forward.
Cool. In fact, picking up, Tommy, on what you said about Wild Wild West, I'm sure, Luke, you've got some thoughts on that because you're the, shall we say, you're the techie here, working away on the security side of things with the Foundation for Interwallet Operability. But, that's a long title. But what does that mean practically? How do you help? What's your views on, security and, scammers and all those kind of issues when it comes to NFTs and, you know, artists, how you,
it's a really important topic because I think
sure.
we are inventing the future and we're thinking through, okay, how do we learn from the mistakes of the past? You know, intellectual property is a very challenging concept. There are some who argue that it's kind of not even a thing, meaning property is generally a scarce, rivalrous resource. And as soon as you take information such as a song file or an image and you put it out there for anyone to obtain, then it's no longer scarce and rivalrous. So there's all this complexity around how do we use digital intellectual property. And at the same time, back to the community concept, we have to make all of this accessible. I've got 3 young kids, they're 8 and they just turned 11 and 13. And they've both made, my 2 oldest have made hundreds of dollars minting NFTs. And they've done NFT consulting, and these kids that can access this from an island, in Puerto Rico, serving anyone in the world. And I just get very excited about the opportunities. If my kids are an example, that anyone can jump in, learn about this stuff, provide services as a consultant, take their own art. And some of their art is really cool and put it out there. And because of my reputation, my network within these different communities, people say, oh, I want to have one of Luke's kids' art pieces. That's super cool, and that's just a tiny example of how this creates inclusion and accessibility. But the big challenge, and this is the main thing that we've been focused on at FIO, is the rampant scams and fraud that are all throughout the space. And it's really kind of sad and ironic that the entire point of a blockchain is this concept called Byzantine fault tolerance, meaning all the different people you're connecting with. How do you trust that the messages you're sending and receiving are legitimately part of consensus, meaning everyone there who's participating agrees that this digital item that you used to control is now transferred from you to someone else, and now they control it. It's very easy to do with the physical item. I just hand it to you and everyone knows, oh, now it's in your possession, it's yours. But a picture of an item is very challenging. How do you know I didn't send it to 20 other people before I sent it to you? The concept of a non-fungible token, these NFTs, enable people to say provably with cryptographic security, you are the correct owner. The challenge is, with that great functionality, it's too complex. It's very difficult to use, very confusing. As a technologist, I get this, I understand. And a lot of technologists, we like to build cool stuff, but we forget it's supposed to improve the lives of a human being. And so what we do at the Foundation for Interwallet Operability is we provide human readable addresses to your crypto interactions. So instead of a big, long Ethereum address or a big, long Tezos address, you can have Luke at Stokes, for example, or it could be Luke Stokes at the record label, or it could be, whatever the situation might be. And it creates a human readable experience for sending and receiving these digital assets. But on top of that, and this is the important feature we love to let this community know about, if you go to nft.fioprotocol.io, you can sign your NFTs with that human readable address. So when an artist takes a painting, like my friend here, I haven't put it up on my wall yet, but I've got this amazing piece of art that my friend Elijah did. And he signs it like any piece of art, right? They sign it and say, this is mine, I did this. If somebody tries to take a copy of this JPEG or a copy of this song file and pretend that they're me and go mint it on some other blockchain, on some other, decentralized ecosystem, how do you know that it's the real one? Most people don't actually check the contract address and say, well, I know all of Luke's contract addresses that he mints his tokens on, so I know this is a legitimate, original. Nobody does that, right? Even technologists get confused, myself included, on that stuff. So we create a human readable address where you can sign your work, or if you're an organization that's minting specific NFTs and they get sold on secondary markets, anyone in your community can now have a confidence to say, oh, I'm buying an actual original. It's not one that is a copy of one that defrauds the artist I want to support, defrauds me because now I have a fake piece of art that I thought was real. So we think this is really important. If we don't do this, you're going to see a lot of these decentralized marketplaces basically turning to KYC, AML, know your customer, anti-money laundering, where they kind of identify everybody, take all their privacy away, and as a way to prevent these frauds. And I just don't think that's the right direction. I think governments are going to get involved as more and more people complain about the fraud that's taking place. So I think it's super important for our industry to self-regulate and do so with self-sovereign tools like the FIO protocol, open source, openly, freely accessible, permissionless systems that actually reward all the participants. So the artists get rewarded, the platform developers get rewarded, the participants get rewarded via the value created by the blockchain itself. So I think the key points, the takeaway points are, if you're an artist creating NFTs in any space, whether it's a video, whether it's music, whether it's a digital item, like an image, would love for you to check out the FIO protocol, sign your art so you can protect your fans and protect yourself, and also protect your marketplaces. They don't want to be selling fraudulent art. And if people are excited about your art, but they're out there creating copies of it that are fraud, that's going to hurt you, hurt your brand, and hurt the marketplace. So we're very excited to integrate this into more and more different marketplaces. We have incentive programs to help people be able to hire developers to integrate all the tech. And ultimately, again, it's about technology helping everyday users, making their lives easier, solving a problem they sometimes didn't know they had. Now they can take their art, they can sell it, and they can do so confidently in a really simple way to say, okay, I'm buying the real thing. So I think it's really important. And then combining that again with the complexities of IP, and what does IP look like in a Web3 world? What does it look like where I can cryptographically prove I created something and I'm the owner of it, and I don't need middlemen anymore. I don't need all these different people taking a piece of the value I create for my community. And I can also provably demonstrate in a simple way that that's me.
Nice. Any thoughts on that, Christos, Tommy?
Amazing. I mean, obviously the idea of fraud on blockchain, it is kind of oxymoronic. That's not where it's supposed to be. And obviously there's so many different loopholes to exploit vulnerabilities. There's a lot of new code being written. There's a lot of new platforms. All awful things, just like people putting in offers that seemingly in Ethereum, but obviously in a much lower value coin that's passed off as something, and people accepting what they think is $15,000 when it's actually like 50p. That kind of stuff really sucks. I was really keen. I was offered a TES address, so I've got Outerground. Outerground is my work. Outerground is what I use for all of my artwork and my music. So I've got outerground.tes. That's my address, but that's just my wallet address. So it's me. I'm bona fide. What Luke's talking about is actually one step further, which is actually be able to verify each piece that you mint as linked to you, not a 35 symbol address that you're never going to remember or recognize.
I would say another important point too with the NFT signature process that we have, you take a hash of the data at the point of signing it. So this is another important concept. I think it's really important for NFT collectors and artists to understand that most NFTs, the data for the actual item you're purchasing does not live on the blockchain. It's actually, you're buying a link to the data. And usually, hopefully that is on IPFS or some type of decentralized data storage platform, but often it's not. And so there's a famous example of someone who did a rug pull where they had all this NFT art that they sold, and then they swapped out all the pictures to pictures of rugs as a way, almost like a Banksy type thing, to just let everybody know, look, what you're buying is not really what you think you're buying. And so what we have is there's a technical concept called a hash. And what it means is you take all that data, you run it through a one-way function, and you get a very specific signature. And that hash can provably demonstrate that when you're buying something, it's the exact bit by bit, data that the original artist intended. And it's another important part of NFT security and preventing fraud, is making sure that what you're purchasing is exactly what was intended by the artist. And that's again where the NFT signature provides that. So it's another great example of how this stuff gets really complicated really quickly. And there's a lot of moving pieces under the hood that most people don't want to spend time and learn about and figure out about. But if they don't, they can be defrauded, like you said, with fake tokens or things of that nature.
Sure. I mean, I think, yeah, Tommy, please.
No, I was just going to add, I mean, I think this is a really key point. So I do I have done for the last sort of 8 months, Twitter space on Mondays at 6 p.m. UK time, all about NFTs and music. And we talk about a lot with newbies that come on about the pitfalls of this space. I think it's a really interesting dichotomy that there is an amount of hand-holding that you need to do, but there's also an amount of, look, let them make mistakes. It's a bit like rearing children. It's that, Luke, you've got kids, and Christos, I don't know if you've got, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like there comes a point where you have to kind of back off and just let them fall over so that they kind of learn from their mistakes. And so I think we're in this process at the moment where we're kind of deciding, I think, as a community, how much we let people fall over and hurt themselves, and how much we need to protect them in this concept. I think what the whole concept around token Traxx is education. I think this is where we're at in the grand cycle of where we're at. We are educating people, whether it's artists that we bring on, whether it's the artist community, whether it's, the NFT community in general. We are educating them with what we understand. We've got an incredible team, over 36 people now in the token Traxx team. And there's a lot of amazing brains and people that are right across the industry, not just the music side, but also obviously the NFT side. And I think the key for us is we sit down with an artist and go like, first question, what is your Web3 strategy? And of course, most artists are like, what's Web3? You know, most of the time. Yeah. And you say, okay, great, you're in the right place. And then we talk them through the concepts around blockchain and NFTs. We explain and we show them what other sort of projects people have done and stuff like that. And then we sit down and we work on a 3, 6, 8, 12 month campaign in much the same way as you would if you made an album. You know, for much way as a producer, I would sit down with an artist and we'd listen through to 30 songs or whatever, and we go, well, look, you know, that's really strong, that needs more work. But you look at it like a campaign, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a story, you're trying to build a narrative with the people that are going to get involved. You know, those people that are going to come into your first NFT drop, they might sort of come in at this kind of level, and then by the 3rd or 4th NFT drop, they're really engaged and you've got them and they're part of this kind of concept. So I think, you know, hand-holding people into this experience and trying to make it as protective as you possibly can, without kind of giving away the concepts of Web3, you know, decentralization, autonomy, you know, those things that I think are very important as part of Web3, but not everybody wants that. And a lot of people, in fact, my experience with artists, they just want to make music. They just want to play gigs. And most of the time, you do need to handhold them in that whole experience. We had a great talk on Monday, actually, on my Twitter space, with a bunch of different artists about this. And we were talking about, you know, some of the artists were like, you have to work so hard, you just got to go for it. And you've got to really spend, you know, 24/7 engaging with your artists, engaging with your community and everything. And they're absolutely right. But is that any different from the normal community, your normal fan base? You know, people talk about community in the digital art world because I think it's a relatively new thing, this kind of wider community of digital art. But actually in music, this is what we've always done. We've always built communities. When you play a gig, you're playing to, you know, 20 people or something, 3 or 4 of them are going to come back to you after the gig and they're going to go, can I get a selfie? You know, where's your Instagram? Blah, blah. Now that's your basis of your true fans. That's your basis of your potential NFT community. What NFTs bring is a much more exciting and fun and resourceful way of managing those people that the music business and the music industry has always targeted. So I think, you know, trying to find that kind of balance between how you manage your community really comes down to you as an artist. What are you prepared to do? When we talk to artists, we're not necessarily looking at artists that are selling a lot of music or having a load of listeners on Spotify or anything like that. We're looking at artists that are engaged with their community through social media, that are engaged with their community at gigs, you know, that work really hard to keep that engagement up tight. Those are the perfect kind of NFT artists I think you're seeing.
I'd like to give an example of that, and then I'd love to hear Christos comment on it from an artist perspective. But one of the things that we've been really excited about with the 2-part nature of our Theo crypto handle is the domain part can be the artist brand, and then they can have it be a private domain, so they get to control, because it's also an NFT. So their private key can control who gets to register an account on that domain. So they can give out like special crypto handles to their fans, and then they can engage with those fans on the blockchain by doing what's called a Theo request. So they can actually, the fans can send a request to say, hey, send me $10 or send me your special token that you minted, or send me an NFT. And then they have a way to do like contests, because you can put a memo in that request as well. So the ability to actually engage with people in the Web3 space, which otherwise would be difficult to connect with. Some of them don't, you know, give their email address, or they don't give their name, address, phone number, all that traditional marketing approach. They're just an address on the blockchain. But with a Theo request, you have the way to interact with them. And we've seen some fun examples of this, different contests and things like that. And I'm curious, Christos, if you've thought much about, you know, how does the landscape change? Because I exactly agree with you. The layer 0, as we call it, layer 1 security is, you know, the consensus algorithm on the blockchain, but the number of human beings that believe what you're doing is valuable, that layer 0 is the really important part. And I'm curious what your strategy as an artist to actually connect with people at that layer on the blockchain. And we hope that a Theo request, as an example, is a cool way to do it. But have you thought of any strategies of how do you engage with people? Because otherwise you got to go to like decentralized platforms like Twitter and other places.
Yeah, I mean,
that they're there.
I'd have to say, to be honest, that's a novel concept for me. And I can see the value in it. The problem that I've had is as an early adopter of, you know, blockchain evangelism, I found that I'm still educating everyone I meet.
Yeah,
everyone. And I know there's a younger generation of kids out there who are going to become blockchain natives, but the technology has got a long way to go in terms of accessibility. And I think obviously things like being able to replace long hashes with normal, words is, it's welcome, but it kind of needs to be on a next level of ease of use. There needs to be some layer 3 interpretation. There definitely needs to be some kind of, it needs to look like regular Web 2 on top. And I think just like the internet, users don't need to know how it works behind. They just need to be able to use it. And obviously when we went from, Web 1 to Web 2, we saw an explosion of e-commerce because the shops just work like you'd expect a shop to. You press the button, you pay your money, you get your goods. Now, obviously, now that we're in this new space, the problem seems to be is that it's been designed by technologists, primarily for technologists, which is great. I would say I'm not a technologist. I'm what I would classify as a high-level software user at the very top end of using software, and I can develop a little bit with proprietary tools. Always have been able to, but obviously for me, it's been a journey, and it's been a journey that I've been on for many years. So I think there's still challenges in terms of my mentality is still Web 2, even though I'm a Web 3 advocate, and I've worked with several Web 3 organizations in helping them refine their messages and developing branding and content about how do we communicate the benefits of Web 3. So I'm fairly kind of confident of my ability to understand the features and benefits, shall we say, and why it's a kind of a next evolutionary step for the internet and for kind of business. I still find the technology quite testing, and I'm always very nervous when carrying out any kind of blockchain transaction, because I have a natural, like most people do, inbuilt fear that I'm going to do something wrong and lose everything. And I'm pretty experienced across all of the platforms. I've done, you name it, I've got the t-shirts for it. It's difficult. What I'm kind of waiting for is a dovetailing. I mean, in the NFT community, in terms of art, people are still heavily reliant on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook pages to reach their kind of audience. And I find that really kind of disappointing and quite hard. And obviously Telegram, Discord's gone from being a game chat to kind of the center of the blockchain universe in terms of communications. And even the way that the Discord servers have evolved with functionality over the last year or two is quite incredible. I still find Discord difficult, not difficult to use, but difficult to penetrate. It's very difficult to penetrate a Discord community, because when you enter a community, you have to put the time in to just be accepted. And obviously, yeah, I do have kids, Tommy. So as you can imagine, life is scheduled, and I don't have that kind of 18-year-old time frame where before I had a wife and children, I had literally 24 hours a day to play with these things. Whereas now, you are scheduled between the hours that you can fit in. So there's a lot of challenges, and actually, as a musician who have been producing electronic music for years, I have no audience. I don't play gigs. I'm not a performer. I'm a studio musician. I love my music. I've probably produced 4 or 5 albums and hundreds more tracks. I have 10 Spotify listeners. So it's really difficult to find how do you kind of find that audience if you're not a live player who's 24 hours a day to spend on social media. So I will be interested to have a chat with Tommy about
Well,
where's that future
talking
going?
about that, Christos, because we've just got 2 minutes left. If I could go to Tommy just to answer some of that, that would be good.
I mean, I'm not sure I can answer in 2 minutes, but what I'll try. I think that, you know, the interesting concepts around this is I totally agree, first of all, about Discord, and the, you know, putting the modern musician, I think the modern artist has to spend so much time online doing social media stuff, whether it's, you know, through platforms like Twitter or whatever. But if you think about it, you know, that's what they did. Was what they did 20 years ago, but they just did it in the back of a transit van, and you toured around and you played gigs. I think that there are many artists that we talk to who are exactly like you, that are just sort of, you know, playing in their front rooms and making music and putting it out there. I think what's beautiful about this Web3 space is it gives you choice. Artists have a lot more choice now. Traditionally, all artists could really do, if they were lucky, they might get signed. And if they got signed, you know, it might be a gateway into a very gated world. It might be the gateway in. But you know what? In order to do that, you pretty much have to sell your soul. You had to sell everything that you were ever going to do ever again. And if you might be lucky, you might get it back, you know, 20 years after they drop you. And of course, they drop you, not the other way around. This new system gives you choice. You can do whatever you want. You can sell this bit here, you can sell that bit there. And I think that's so powerful. And, you know, that is going to put a lot of pressure on the current system. And that current system is going to have to pivot and stay relevant. And that's what's really beautiful about this space. And that's what we try and do with Traxx, is explain to people that that's what the options that you have. You have choice. We don't take anyone's copyright. They retain everything.